There's a pain that changes you, a moment you never expected, a knife you never saw coming. Betrayal in love doesn't just break your heart, it rewires your soul, and not in the way you'd hope. One day, you're planning a future with someone. The next, you're questioning every memory, every word, every smile. That kind of betrayal, it shakes the ground you walk on. But here's the paradox sometimes, it's in the breaking that the becoming begins. Because that betrayal, it didn't destroy you. It introduced you to parts of yourself you had never met before. You see, love when it's real builds you, but when it's fake, when it's manipulative, disloyal, cruel, that kind of love was never love at all, and when it ends, something beautiful begins. So if you've been betrayed, if you're sitting there wondering why someone you gave everything to could throw you away like nothing, I need you to know this wasn't your ending, it was your awakening. The betrayal didn't break you, it gave you wings, and here's how. There's a moment after betrayal that feels unreal, like you're walking through a dream that just turned into a nightmare. Everything you thought was real suddenly feels manufactured. You sit in silence, trying to piece together when the shift happened, when the smile became a smirk, when the touch turned cold, when the words started meaning the opposite of what they said. And you wonder, was it always like this? Was I just blind? That's the cruelty of betrayal. It's not just about what they did, it's about how it makes you doubt your own mind. You go back over every detail. The texts, the conversations, the small, seemingly harmless moments that now carry sharp edges. You try to remember when the turning point came, as if identifying it will give you back control. But it doesn't. Because the truth is, it wasn't one moment. It was a buildup of small choices they made that you couldn't see, or maybe didn't want to, and now, in the aftermath, you're left with the question that haunts you: was any of it real? That's where most people get stuck, in the loop of trying to find meaning in the mess, trying to understand why someone who claimed to love them could lie, cheat, deceive, or walk away so easily. And if you've ever been there, you know how that pain swallows you. Because betrayal doesn't just wound you, it makes you question your ability to trust, not just them, but yourself. You start to wonder, if I couldn't see this coming, what else am I blind to? But the real tragedy isn't that they betrayed you. It's that for a while, you betrayed yourself to keep them. That's the part no one talks about. The way you felt something was wrong but pushed it aside. The way your gut whispered and you silenced it. The way you made excuses for the inconsistencies, explained away the coldness, gave passes to the patterns that hurt you. Not because you were weak, but because you were loyal, because you believed in them, because you loved them, and that's what hurts the most, that you were all in, that you were honest, that you showed up, and they didn't. But what if that's not the tragedy? What if that's the beginning? Because here's the truth: betrayal breaks the illusion, not you. It shatters the version of the story you told yourself, the version where they were your person, your future, your home, and that hurts like hell. But what's left behind when the illusion breaks is not emptiness, it's truth. And truth, as painful as it is the only thing that sets you free. See, you didn't lose love. You lost the idea of love. You lost the narrative you wrote about someone who wasn't living up to it. You lost the version of them you built in your mind, the version who cared, who chose you, who would never hurt you. But that version, that was your creation. It lived in your hope, not in their behavior. Betrayal is a brutal teacher, but it's also a clear one. It pulls the mask off. It shows you what was always there but hard to accept. And once you see clearly, you can't unsee it. That's why it hurts so deeply, because clarity doesn't come with comfort. It comes with confrontation. It forces you to face the ways you ignored your needs, lowered your standards, quieted your voice. And that realization is not shameful, it's sacred, because now you know what manipulation disguised as affection looks like. You know how dishonesty can wear a charming face. You know how silence can scream volumes when someone's pulling away. And you know, more than ever, what it feels like to be misled, to be undervalued, to be replaced or abandoned, and yet still survive. That's the key. You survived. Even when your heart was ripped open, even when the truth crushed your chest, Even when your legs gave out from under you, you're still here. You didn't disappear. You didn't collapse permanently. You're breathing. You're waking up every day in a world that tried to break you, and you're still choosing to live in it. That's power. You may not feel strong yet, but strength isn't loud, it's quiet. It shows up in the moments you don't think anyone notices. It's in the way you got out of bed when your whole body wanted to disappear. It's in the way you ate something when food had no taste. It's in the way you didn't text them, even though every part of you wanted one more answer. That is strength, and with every one of those choices, you start to piece yourself back together, not as the person you were before the betrayal, but as someone new, someone wiser, someone who now knows that love without honesty is manipulation, that promises without follow-through are illusions, that connection without commitment is confusion, and that knowledge, that's your armor. People think healing means going back to who you were. It doesn't. It means becoming someone who no longer betrays themselves to keep someone else comfortable. It means being someone who can finally look at the truth and say, that's not what I deserve. It means recognizing that love shouldn't hurt like that. It shouldn't make you question your value. It shouldn't drain you, confuse you, shrink you, and the fact that you now see that that's the beginning of your freedom. You begin to make different choices, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You stop romanticizing inconsistency. You stop chasing closure from people who never gave you honesty. You stop waiting for apologies that would only reopen the wound. You realize that the apology you've been waiting for, you don't need it anymore. You've already begun to give yourself the one thing they never could: truth. And with truth you heal. Not in a straight line, not without setbacks, not without nights where the tears come back harder than ever, but slowly, steadily, deeply. You learn that healing isn't forgetting what happened. It's learning how to live in spite of it. How to trust again, first in yourself, then in the world. You learn to spot the red flags and not explain them away. You learn to speak up instead of staying quiet. You learn to walk away sooner. And here's the most beautiful part: one day, you look back and realize that the moment they broke you was the moment life began building you, not because you wanted it, not because you deserved that pain, but because through it, you found parts of yourself you didn't know existed: strength, intuition, boundaries, courage. You stopped trying to fit into someone else's version of love and started defining your own. You stopped shrinking to be chosen and started expanding to be you. You stopped fearing abandonment and started practicing self-trust. And slowly, the version of you that used to beg for crumbs learns to demand a full seat at the table, not from others, but from yourself. That's when the shift happens. That's when the betrayal no longer owns you. It becomes a chapter, not the whole book. It becomes something you survived, not something you carry. You start to view it not as your failure, but as their reflection. Not as a curse, but as a redirection. You see it for what it was: a painful awakening that freed you from the lie you were living. And you don't need to hate them to heal. You don't need revenge. You don't need to prove anything. Because your healing is your closure. Your peace is your power. And the version of you who walks forward after being shattered, they are unshakable. That's what betrayal gives you in its twisted way. Not permission, but power, the kind of power that comes from truth. The kind of truth that doesn't just open your eyes, it opens your wings. And when you finally fly, you won't fly to prove them wrong. You'll fly because they were never meant to be the destination, just the catalyst. They thought they were breaking you, but they were building your wings. There's a point after betrayal when the shock wears off. The silence settles, the excuses you made for them start to collapse. You're left staring at the version of yourself that was willing to ignore your own voice just to keep someone else around. And that's when it really hits: not just the heartbreak, but the regret. Not just the sadness, but the shame. Not just the pain of what they did, but the pain of what you allowed. You start to see it differently. The way you twisted yourself to be what they needed. The way you tolerated comments that belittled you. The way you accepted late replies, cancelled plans, inconsistent words followed by shallow apologies, you start remembering the moments you downplayed your needs so you wouldn't seem too much, the times you stayed quiet just to keep the peace, the times you blamed yourself for being upset when all you really wanted was to be respected. But that version of you wasn't weak. That version of you was doing their best. That version of you believed love meant sacrifice, even if it meant sacrificing your own standards. That version of you thought that being chosen meant being agreeable, being low maintenance, being available, being understanding, being patient even when all of that was being taken for granted. You weren't wrong for loving deeply. You just didn't realize that love without boundaries isn't love, it's abandonment of self. And when the betrayal came, whether it was cheating, lies, ghosting, emotional neglect, or walking away without warning, you were forced to confront something that had been building for a while. The betrayal didn't begin when they walked away. It began the moment you started walking away from yourself to keep them. It began the moment you made their comfort more important than your clarity. The moment you made their inconsistency something you tolerated instead of something you addressed. That's where betrayal becomes a teacher, because it rips away the illusion that if you just love harder, stay longer, forgive more, give more, they'll finally treat you right. You learn in the hardest way possible that no amount of love will change someone who isn't ready to respect you. And when you finally sit in that truth, it hurts, because you realize how many pieces of yourself you gave away hoping that someone would give you something they were never willing to. But here's the quiet miracle: in that moment of devastation, you also find something you never had before, the beginning of radical self-respect. You start to realize that maybe the mistake wasn't that you gave too much. Maybe the mistake was giving it to someone who didn't know how to hold it. Maybe the problem wasn't your sensitivity, maybe it was their inability to meet you with the same depth. Maybe you weren't too much. Maybe you were just in a space that required you to be smaller so they could feel bigger, and slowly your perspective shifts. You stop viewing their betrayal as proof of your inadequacy. You stop seeing their failure to show up as your failure to be enough. You stop making their choices your responsibility, because you finally understand that someone else's betrayal isn't a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their capacity. And from that place, something inside you hardens, not in a bitter way, but in a protective way. You start rebuilding your identity around who you are, not around who abandoned you. You stop waiting for closure and start giving yourself answers. You stop giving people chances who show you over and over again that they cannot hold your heart with care. You stop begging for clarity and start choosing it. You stop settling for "at least they" and start saying it's not enough. You learn the power of walking away, not out of anger, but out of alignment. You stop trying to change people and start choosing peace. You stop engaging in drama because now you recognize that chaos isn't passion, it's dysfunction. You start setting standards that aren't based on what you think you deserve on your worst day, but what you know you deserve on your best. You no longer get impressed by breadcrumbs. You're not moved by hot and cold behavior. You're not entertained by games, because you know who you are now, and once you know that, you can't go back. You learn to say no with ease. You learn to say, "I'm not available for that." You learn to say, "This doesn't feel good, and I'm allowed to say that." You learn that saying how you feel isn't needy, it's healthy. You stop waiting 3 hours to reply just to seem chill. You stop dressing your silence up as strength. You stop confusing being unbothered with being disconnected from your own needs. Instead, you become honest, clear, grounded, and that kind of energy, it scares people who only knew how to manipulate you when you doubted yourself. It disrupts people who fed off your people pleasing. It removes access from those who benefited from your inability to set boundaries, but it also attracts something new, people who recognize your self-respect and rise to meet it, not challenge it. And yes, it can feel lonely at first. You might have to spend time in solitude. You might outgrow friends, lovers, even family patterns that once felt familiar but are no longer nourishing. But the loneliness that comes from choosing yourself is a very different kind of loneliness. It's quiet, but it's not empty, because for the first time you're no longer abandoning yourself. You start to fill your own cup, not because you don't want love from others, but because you finally understand that no one should be pouring into a cup that has holes in it. You start healing the holes, the ones created by childhood wounds, past betrayals, insecurities, fears. You stop asking love to fix what you haven't faced. You stop looking for partners to rescue you from your reflection. You start showing up for yourself in the way you once begged others to. You start holding your own hand. You start speaking to yourself kindly. You learn how to sit with your pain without judging it. You cry when you need to, scream when it's too much, rest when you're exhausted. You become your own safe space, and from that place you build a life that's rooted in dignity. You begin to redefine success in relationships. It's no longer about being chosen, it's about being met. It's no longer about avoiding conflict, it's about embracing honesty. It's no longer about how good someone makes you feel in the beginning, it's about how consistently they show up over time. You stop being impressed by grand gestures and start being grounded by quiet consistency. You realize that love isn't found in the highs, it's proven in the boring, everyday decisions to care. And when someone enters your life and shows inconsistency, you don't try to change them. You don't perform, you don't chase, you simply leave, because now self-respect isn't just a buzzword, it's your way of being. You've earned it. You've built it from the ashes of the version of you that once thought tolerating pain was a sign of strength. Now you know better. Strength isn't how much you can take. It's how quickly you walk away when your peace is at risk. It's how clearly you say no when something doesn't align. It's how deeply you honor your feelings instead of dismissing them for the sake of harmony. And maybe the most radical thing you learn is this: you don't need to be hard to be respected. You can be soft and still have boundaries. You can be kind and still say enough. You can be loving and still leave. Because radical self-respect is not the absence of emotion, it's the presence of clarity. You are no longer living to be chosen, you are living to be honored. You are no longer begging for validation, you are standing in your knowing. You are no longer afraid of losing people, because you know the only thing you can't afford to lose again is yourself. And you finally understand, betrayal wasn't just something that happened to you. It was something that happened for you, not because the pain was fair, not because the loss was justified, but because it broke something open. It cracked the version of you that was willing to settle for less. It shook you awake. It stripped away your illusions and introduced you to your power. You are no longer afraid to be alone, because you know now being alone with your peace is better than being with someone who makes you feel alone in a relationship. You know that the love you've been searching for doesn't begin when someone else sees your worth. It begins the moment you stop abandoning yourself to be seen. That's the rebirth that betrayal creates. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it doesn't happen overnight, but one day you look in the mirror and you don't see the person who was broken. You see the person who built herself from the wreckage, who chose herself, who stood back up, who stopped waiting to be saved because she realized she's been the hero all along. And no one can take that from you, not again, not ever. There's a moment after betrayal that no one prepares you for. It's not the night they leave, it's not the day you find out the truth. It's not even the moment you collapse to the floor because the pain is too much for your body to hold. No, the moment I'm talking about is quieter, emptier. It comes days, weeks, sometimes even months later. It's when you've cried all your tears, when you've stopped checking your phone, when the anger's gone quiet and all that's left is you, sitting in silence, wondering who you are now. That's where it begins, the birth of your real power. But not because you suddenly feel strong. In fact, it begins with weakness, with emptiness, with a kind of emotional exhaustion that makes you question everything: how you loved, who you trusted, why you ignored the signs. why you let it go on for so long, and most of all, how you're going to live with the aftermath. That's the beginning of your power, not the strength itself, but the willingness to face the wreckage and not look away. No one tells you this part. The real turning point in healing isn't when they apologize or when karma hits them or when you finally move on with someone new. It's the moment when you stop asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and start asking, "Why was I so willing to let myself be hurt?" Not in a blaming way, not with shame, but with curiosity, with courage, because that's where transformation happens. Not in revenge, not in rebound relationships, not in pretending you don't care, but in the raw honesty of finally sitting with your reflection and saying, "I want better, and it has to start with me." You see, betrayal doesn't just show you who they are, it shows you who you were. It holds up a mirror and asks, what part of you believed that this was love? Because when someone betrays you, it's not just about their actions, it's about the way you responded. The way you kept giving chances, the way you begged for closure, the way you broke your own heart trying to protect theirs, the way you stayed when everything in your soul was screaming to leave. That's not weakness. That's programming, that's unhealed wounds, that's a desperate hunger to be chosen by someone you already knew was hurting you, and when you see that, truly see it, you realize that your power was never missing, it was just buried. Under layers of self-abandonment, under years of trying to prove your worth through someone else's eyes, under beliefs you picked up as a child that told you love had to be earned, that peace had to be negotiated, that affection had to be performed for. But now you get to choose again. That's the part betrayal doesn't take from you: choice. They may have lied, cheated, walked away, replaced you, but they did not take your power to choose who you become next. And that's everything. That's where your wings start to grow. Because every single time you choose to get back up, even if you don't feel strong, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Every time you decide not to text them, not to stalk their social media, not to respond to that breadcrumb they throw your way just to keep you emotionally hooked, you are becoming someone new. Someone who doesn't need their attention to feel visible. Someone who doesn't need their apology to feel validated. Someone who doesn't need their presence to feel worthy. The power isn't in forgetting them. The power is in remembering yourself and that process. It's brutal, it's not pretty. Healing isn't inspirational quotes and yoga classes and bubble baths. Healing is waking up at 3 a.m. because your chest feels like it's being crushed by memories. It's crying on the floor of your shower because your bed feels too empty. It's canceling plans because you don't know how to fake a smile today. It's walking into a room full of people and feeling invisible because your soul is still catching up to your body, and still you show up. Still you take one step, then another, then another. That's power. It's not in the moments you feel good, it's in the moments you feel broken and still choose not to break. It's in the moments you feel lonely but don't go running back to what hurt you. It's in the moments you whisper to yourself, "I deserve more," even when you don't fully believe it yet. That's the kind of power betrayal can never take, the kind that grows slowly, silently, in the dark. Because when you've been betrayed, you no longer fear losing someone, you fear losing yourself again. And that fear, it becomes your guide. You begin to ask different questions. You begin to listen to your gut, not override it. You begin to prioritize peace over passion, consistency over intensity, reality over fantasy. You begin to rebuild your life in a way that reflects who you are, not who you were trying to be for them. And little by little, your energy shifts. You stop attracting chaos. You stop responding to mixed signals. You stop craving what used to feel like love because now you see it for what it really was: control, codependency, or confusion. And that shift is not just personal, it's spiritual, it's energetic. You vibrate at a different frequency now, one that only invites in what aligns with your healed self. People start to notice. Some try to pull you back not because they care, but because they can feel you detaching. Because the version of you that tolerated breadcrumbs is no longer at the table, the version of you that explained away disrespect is no longer answering, and they'll test you. Oh, they'll test you. They'll try to come back with soft words and temporary apologies. But here's the thing, when you've met your inner power, you can see through sweetness that has no substance. You become immune to the charm of people who only show up when they feel you slipping away. You stop romanticizing the ones who left you bleeding and called it love. You stop giving passes to people who were committed to misunderstanding you, because now you know you'd rather walk alone in truth than walk with someone who distorts it. Your inner power teaches you that you are not afraid to be alone anymore, because alone is where you met yourself. Alone is where you rebuilt. Alone is where you healed your inner child, faced your demons, silenced the noise, and realized that your worth was never up for debate. It was only ever forgotten, hidden under the rubble of your desire to be loved. Now you remember. You remember who you were before they dimmed your light. You remember what you dreamed of before you shrunk to fit into their world. You remember the way your heart used to beat for life, not just for love. You remember that you're not here to be chosen. You're here to choose, and now you choose you, and that choice, it echoes through your posture, through your voice, through your boundaries, through your relationships, through your silence, through your presence. You no longer need to explain why you left. You no longer need to justify your standards. You no longer need to apologize for expecting the bare minimum honesty, consistency, respect. That's when you know you've tapped into your power, when peace becomes more important than proving a point. When you no longer chase, when you no longer beg, when you no longer shrink, when you no longer see love as something you must earn, but something you must discern. Betrayal may have brought you to your knees, but your power lifts you back up. And when you rise this time, you rise differently, not with vengeance, not with bitterness, but with depth, with grace, with strength that isn't loud but undeniable, the kind of strength that doesn't need validation, doesn't seek permission, doesn't require recognition. You rise quietly, powerfully, fully, because now you're not seeking love to feel whole. You're already whole, and anything that enters your life from this point on must meet you there in wholeness. In truth, in mutual respect, not because you're hard to love, but because you finally understand the kind of love that's worthy of you. And that is the gift, the unshakable gift. The fire that betrayal tried to extinguish ended up igniting something deeper, a power that was never outside of you. It was always within, waiting for you to return. It's strange how betrayal, something that feels like the deepest rejection, can end up being the very thing that opens the door to real love. You don't see it right away. In the beginning, you feel anything but free. You feel trapped, confused, haunted by what-ifs and unfinished sentences. Your heart still spins in circles, trying to make sense of how someone could throw away everything you gave so willingly. It doesn't feel like liberation. It feels like loss. It feels like failure. It feels like you were replaceable, forgettable, like all the love in the world still wasn't enough to make them stay. But slowly, with time, the lens starts to change. At first, just a little. The silence that once felt unbearable becomes a little less loud. The questions that used to keep you awake at night lose their grip. And then, one day, you wake up and you're not obsessively wondering what they're doing. You're not replaying conversations in your head anymore. You're not hoping their name will pop up on your phone. You're just breathing, and that breath is different. It's deeper. It's yours. Because for the first time in a long time, you're no longer performing for love. You're no longer trying to earn someone's attention. You're no longer editing yourself to be easier to digest. You're not calculating your worth based on how someone else treats you. That person, the one who twisted love into a game, the one who kept you guessing, the one who took your vulnerability and mistook it for weakness, they're gone. And in their absence, something holy remains: space. At first, that space feels like a void, but slowly you begin to realize it's sacred, because for too long that space was filled with emotional noise, with second guessing, with people, pleasing, with overthinking every text, with justifying disrespect because you were too afraid to be alone. But now it's clear. Now there's room for your heart to expand, room for your voice to return, room for peace to exist without being interrupted by confusion. That's what betrayal ultimately gives you, a clearing, a place where you get to decide with full clarity what you will never allow again. And when you've known the ache of being betrayed, when you've stared down the reality that someone you trusted saw your heart and still broke it, you change. You become intentional, you become discerning. You stop falling for the rush, the spark, the chemistry, and start waiting for the consistency, the safety, the alignment. You realize that real love doesn't come dressed in intensity. It doesn't show up in a whirlwind and sweep you off your feet only to disappear the next week. Real love is steady, it's quiet, it's safe. It doesn't make you question yourself. It doesn't keep you up at night wondering if you're too much. It doesn't punish you for having needs. It doesn't gaslight you into thinking your standards are unreasonable. But in order to receive that kind of love, you have to be ready for it. And being ready doesn't mean being perfect. It means being healed enough to recognize it. Because when you're still carrying the residue of betrayal, you start to think that love is supposed to hurt a little. You think you have to earn it. You think you're supposed to fight for it. You confuse chaos with connection. You call inconsistency passion. You think it's romantic to hold on no matter what, even if what is slowly destroying your sense of self. But then something clicks. The pain teaches you. It doesn't just teach you about them, it teaches you about you. It teaches you what kind of love you want, what kind of partner you are, what you're not willing to tolerate anymore, and you start unlearning everything you thought love was supposed to be. You stop glamorizing struggle. You stop waiting for people to come back. You stop rewriting your story just to keep people in your life who were never meant to stay. You stop chasing people who can't see you because you finally realize you are the prize. You are the love you were searching for, and that changes everything. Suddenly, red flags don't look romantic. They look exhausting. You see through the charm. You hear the subtle manipulation. You sense the energy of someone who just wants your presence, not your soul. And you walk away faster, not because you're cold, but because you've learned. You've paid in pain for your wisdom, and you're no longer willing to bleed for a connection that isn't reciprocal. And here's what's beautiful. When you stop tolerating less, the world responds differently. Your energy shifts. You stop attracting people who want to play with your heart. You stop engaging with those who don't know how to hold space for your truth, because you're no longer hiding your light to make someone else comfortable. You're no longer shrinking to fit. You're no longer sending mixed signals to yourself. You've become a whole person, not perfect, not fully healed, but whole in the sense that you know who you are now. You know what you bring to the table. You know that your love is rare and that not everyone deserves access to it. You're no longer trying to convince someone to stay, because if they need convincing, they were never truly with you in the first place. This is what real readiness looks like when you no longer chase love. You create a life that invites it in. You're not desperate anymore. You're not waiting to be rescued. You're not building your identity around who chooses you. You're choosing you. You're saying, I don't need someone to complete me. I want someone to complement me, to grow with me, to meet me in truth. And one day, without warning, that kind of love appears. Maybe slowly, maybe unexpectedly, but when it does, you'll feel the difference. It will be calming, not confusing, grounding, not dizzying. It won't require you to abandon parts of yourself. It won't trigger your wounds constantly. It will feel like home, not because it's familiar in pain, but because it's safe in peace. You won't be wondering where you stand. You won't be decoding mixed messages. You won't feel like you're walking on eggshells. You'll be able to exhale. You'll be able to relax. You'll be able to speak without fear, and they'll listen. They won't be perfect. They'll still make mistakes, but they'll show up, they'll repair, they'll care. Not just with words, with actions, and when that love comes, you'll be ready, not because the old wounds don't exist anymore, but because you no longer need love to fill those wounds. You've already done the healing. You've already walked through the fire. You've already stood alone in your pain and found strength you didn't know you had. So now, love is no longer your lifeline, it's your reflection. A reflection of how far you've come. A reflection of the standard you now live by. A reflection of the energy you put into the world. Betrayal, as awful as it was, did something you never expected. It stripped away everything that wasn't real so you could finally receive what is. It broke the fantasy so you could have the reality. It burned down what was false so you could build something true, and maybe that's the paradox. Maybe the heartbreak was the beginning of your opening. Maybe the betrayal wasn't the end of your story, but the redirection you never knew you needed. Because now you're not just open to love, you're ready to receive it, and there's a difference. When you're open to love but unhealed, you attract what feels good but hurts deeply. But when you're open and healed, you attract what feels good and treats you well. That's where you are now, ready, whole, worthy. You always were, you just had to lose what was fake to remember what's real. So let them go, let the betrayal be what it was, don't rewrite it, don't water it down, don't glamorize it, accept it not as a reflection of you, but as a release from them. Not because they deserved your forgiveness, but because you deserve your freedom. And when the right love finds you, and it will, you'll recognize it not by how much it excites your nervous system, but by how deeply it calms your soul, because you've done the work, you've built your wings. And now, you're ready to fly not toward someone else, but toward the life that always had room for real love. You just needed to clear the space, and now, that space is open. Betrayal in love hurts in a way few things do. It's a cut so deep, it doesn't just scar, it reshapes. But maybe that's the point. Maybe betrayal wasn't sent to destroy you, maybe it was sent to awaken you, to shift your path, to end the chapter where you tolerated less than you deserved. And begin the one where you finally fly. You thought this would be your end, but look at you, still standing, still growing, still becoming. Betrayal tried to break your heart, but instead it built your wings. Now it's time to fly.